Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to my new video. In this video, we can discuss about transport of oxygen in blood, that how oxygen is transported in the blood, what are their percentages, what are their saturation, and what are their partial pressure. So first of all, we will discuss about the reaction, that how oxygen react with hemoglobin, and what are their percentages which are the blood transport oxygen in the human body. So first of all, we will discuss that what are respiratory gases. So like all other materials, respiratory gases are also transported in various regions of the body by means of blood is responsible for this transport of oxygen, and the blood transport oxygen from the lungs to different tissue, while carbon dioxide from tissue to the lungs. So we will discuss their percentages of oxygen. We'll also discuss the percentages of carbon dioxide, and in this video we can discuss the oxygen percentage, their saturation, their partial pressure. So first of all, we will discuss their reaction. um, Oxygen carrying capacity, 97% of oxygen is carried by the blood as oxyhemoglobin, while 3% is transported as dissolved oxygen in plasma. So we will also draw the flowchart of dissolved oxygen in plasma, and this is the flow chart of 97% of oxygen which is transported in the blood as oxyhemoglobin. So oxygen bind with hemoglobin, and this is and form oxyhemoglobin. This reaction is reversible reaction, while the enzyme used in this reaction is carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase is the enzyme which can through which the hemoglobin can react with oxygen, and this form oxyhemoglobin. 4 molecules of oxygen combined with 1 molecule of hemoglobin, and this form oxyhemoglobin. So this is a reversible reaction, and this occur in the alveoli of the lungs in the presence of enzyme carbonic anhydrase. So first we will also discuss that what is oxygen carrying capacity. So oxygen carrying capacity is the ability of hemoglobin to bind with oxygen is called oxygen carrying capacity. That how much oxygen is that how much is the ability or how much is the capacity of blood that it can bind how much of oxygen and transport them and carry them. So if and oxygen carrying capacity is also directly in relation with partial pressure of oxygen. If partial pressure is high, then oxygen carrying capacity will also be high. If the partial pressure becomes low, then oxygen carrying capacity becomes also a decrease occur in the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. So we will all discuss these calculation out of 100 ml of blood. Um, Out of the maximum oxygen carrying capacity of arteries are 20 ml out of 100 ml. At that time, blood is 100% saturated, while the partial pressure is 100 millimeter of mercury. So this is possible only in ideal cases, but here ideal case is not possible. So we will discuss in normal cases. In normal cases, the 19.4 ml of oxygen out of 100 ml can combine with blood, and at that time the blood is 97% saturated, while the partial pressure is 95 millimeter of mercury, and this is possible only at that time when the 1 gram of hemoglobin can has the capacity to transport 1.34 of ml of oxygen. जब हीमोग्लोबिन की इतनी कैपेसिटी हो कि वो 1.34 ml ऑफ ऑक्सीजन को कैरी कर सके, उसकी कैपेसिटी इस टाइम हो, then the blood is then the blood is able to transport 19.4 ml of oxygen out of 100 ml, and at that time the blood is 97% saturated, while the partial pressure is 95 millimeter of mercury. And out of 19.4 ml of oxygen, 5 ml is transported to the tissue at rest time, because tissue also require oxygen. So 5 ml is released to the tissue, while out of 19.4 ml the remaining 14.4 ml is entered to the veins, and at that time the saturation of blood is 75%, while partial pressure is 40 millimeter of mercury. So up to this all we will discuss this in rest time. At rest time, this is the percentages, and this is the saturation, and this is the partial pressure. But during exercise, we also know that during exercise the tissue need a large amount of oxygen, because skeletal muscles require a large amount of oxygen. At that time the rate of respiration will also become high, so the large amount of oxygen is released to the tissue. So out of 19.4 ml of oxygen, 15 ml is transported to the tissue, while remaining 4.4 ml is left to the veins. At that time, the veins has 4.4 ml of oxygen, and the blood is 20% saturated, while the partial pressure becomes 18 mmHg, millimeter of mercury. So these two are due during exercise, and these all are due during rest condition. This is the percentage, while during exercise is also the percentage. So at time of exercise only the vein percentage will become changed, because the blood then transported to the veins from arteries. Then if 15 ml is transported to the tissue, then veins left 4.4 ml of oxygen. At that time, veins has less amount of oxygen, and their saturation is 20%, while their partial pressure becomes 18 millimeter of mercury. So this is all about the transport of oxygen in blood. Is the transport of oxygen in blood. 97% is transported as oxyhemoglobin in blood, while the remaining 3% is transported as dissolved oxygen in plasma. So out of we will discuss the 3% of oxygen out of 100 ml, and we will all discuss this that at in arteries, what are their percentages, what are their saturation, what are their partial pressure. So we will all discussed out of 100 ml. So 0.3 ml of oxygen is transported in the blood out of 100 ml, and at that time the blood is 100% saturated, while the partial pressure is 100 mmHg. But this case is in the cases of ideal cases. In normal cases, the 0.29 ml of oxygen out of 100 ml is transported in the blood. The blood has this amount of oxygen carrying capacity, while the blood is 97% saturated, and the partial pressure is 95 millimeter of mercury. In plasma, out of 0.29 ml, the 0.17 ml of oxygen is released to the tissue, and the remaining 0.12 ml of oxygen is released to the veins. So at that time the blood is 75% saturated, while the partial pressure is 40 millimeter of mercury. So these all calculation are during at the time of as dissolved oxygen in the plasma. This is in the dissolved form calculation, and you must also remember this type of calculation, because in MCQ this also occurred that what is the oxygen carrying capacity in arteries, what is the oxygen carrying capacity of veins, as when the blood is transported in the blood as in dissolved formed in plasma. They also can ask that what are their saturation, what their partial pressure when the blood is 0.12 ml of oxygen is transported in the blood, or when oxygen carrying capacity is 0.29 ml, then what are their saturation or what are their partial pressure. So these type of calculation or this type of MCQ also occur in the an MDCAT test. So if you learn this table, then you can easily cover the all types of MCQ related to this table. So this is a transport of oxygen in blood, and we will also discuss the transport of carbon dioxide in blood. So the carbon dioxide has only 3 percentages. That carbon dioxide is transported in the blood. About 100% out of 100%, the 70% of carbon dioxide is transported in the blood as in the form of bicarbonate. While about 23% is transported in the blood as in the form of carboxyhemoglobin. While the remaining 7% is transported in the blood as CO2 in plasma, means in the dissolved state. So in carbon dioxide transport, only these 3 percentages are very important. You must remember, or you must learn these 3 percentages, that how much percent of carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonate ions, or how much percentages of carbon dioxide is transported in blood in the form of carboxyhemoglobin, or how much percentages of carbon dioxide is transported in the blood in the form of dissolved state in plasma. So in carbon dioxide transport, only these 3 percentages are very important. You can learn these three percentages, so you can cover the MCQ related to the carbon dioxide transport. This is a table. We will discuss the transport of oxygen and the transport of carbon dioxide in blood, and we will discuss the next topic in next video. So see you in the next video. Allah Hafiz.